If you're a leader in an organization, then it's your job to manage change. And many leaders are very effective at navigating organizational change and delivering results. But only a few leaders succeed at managing the change, delivering results, and building trust within the organization. By building trust, these leaders find a way to make that change attractive so that employees willingly come along on this journey into adversity. And that takes skill. Today's guest is Dr. Robert Prescott, and we'll be having a conversation with him about management, change, and trust. Stay with us. Welcome to Crummer Connections podcast series. I'm your host, JB Adams. In this series, I'm talking with members of the Crummer community and inviting them to share their accomplishments, challenges, and best career and business advice. Today's show is brought to you by the Crummer Graduate School of Business at Rollins College. Consistently ranked as the #1 MBA in the state of Florida, the Crummer School offers a variety of educational programs to prepare you to become a global, innovative, and responsible business leader. The Crummer Graduate School of Business, experience excellence. Today's guest is Dr. Robert Prescott, former executive in residence, associate professor, and now continuing graduate faculty of management at the Crummer Graduate School of Business at Rollins College. His area of focus is individual, group, and organizational behavior, and he carries life certifications in human resource management. He holds the special distinction of having had a full 18-year career in the telecommunications industry before pursuing his PhD and becoming a professor. Dr. Robert Prescott, welcome to the show.
Oh, JB, what an honor to be with you and with the Crummer family today. I first and foremost have to share this with you as we get started here. I found myself over coffee this morning reflecting back on my 16 years at Crummer, and I wanted to really say a good, hearty hello to the most important people that may be listening to this podcast, and that's my former students and the alumni of Crummer, all of them. I did the quick math and spent 16 years at Crummer teaching 5 to 6 courses per year. And that equates over a 16, 17-year period to about 3,300 MBAs. And I just can't tell you how much I learned from them when they thought I was teaching them. So it's a two-way street, and lifelong learning is exactly that. And we'll come back to that point later in the discussion.
Oh, well, that is definitely true. All of our lives touch each other. I mean, I think we're all put on this planet to learn from each other. Your area of expertise is management. Your specialty is human behavior. What is particularly important in organizational behavior right now? Why do you think business leaders should be paying attention to this?
Well, as has been, JB, but recent events certainly drive us toward the consideration of dealing with change in our organizations. There's an old proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times." And my goodness, no one thought we would live in this interesting of a time.
To say the least.
But I would say dealing with change, adapting to change, embracing change, finding ways to break through change and to continue to foster a behavior of an organization toward the goal of the organization is probably the most important thing that I teach and right now and have and right now and continue to do with other companies and organizations as I continue to do consulting and workshops.
What would you say is something that people are telling you about the difficulties of the time?
The difficulties of the time is really getting people to continue to communicate in virtual settings, continuing to share a common culture or purpose of the organization when yet we are separated by our normal face-to-face communications and behaviors and interactions.
And from your observations, what does stepping up look like?
That's a great question. Stepping up is putting on your T-shirt of "I can handle change," right? It's putting on your organizational attitude of embracing the change and adapting to change and working with others knowing that no one of us has the exact answer for that change, but that all of us together can help readily deal with that change and come up with effective remedy for dealing with that change.
Okay, and by the same token, I mean, I want to go there. What does falling down look like? And speaking of remedies, what might some remedies be?
Yeah, falling down includes running from change, hiding from change, ignoring change, or as we see in some organizations, even some employees clandestinely undermine change because we feel comfortable as human beings with the status quo. Listen, sociology teaches us that 83% of us don't like change. You know, don't come and disrupt my order. Don't come and disrupt the way that I do things. But when you get groups of people together, then you have a multiplicity of ways that people like to approach and deal with change. Only 17% of us then like change and, in fact, drive our way toward change and try to rally the troops to help deal with the change. And well, guess what? Those 17% scare the heck out of those 83%, right?
They do.
And so what could be the common denominator? What could be the stake in the ground that we as a cumulative group in an organization of employees can rally around that change and try to improve the business growth that we're trying to achieve or the business sustainability that we're trying to achieve? I think it's purpose. I think it's purpose with a keen focus on accountability and responsibility. So I kind of answered what does falling down look like, but yet gave the prognosis of in the prescription for focusing on that, being responsible, being held accountable, and then rallying around that in a cumulative way of accepting of each other's styles and competencies.
All right, with your permission, I'm going to label that the takeaway. So let me just reiterate what I heard. In these challenging, changing times, we need to have a sense of purpose.
Yes.
We need to take responsibility.
And be held accountable for that.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, welcome that accountability. You know, lay it right here, I'll get it done. Lay it right here, present the issue, present the challenge, and we will work together in individual work and group work for organizational purpose.
Perfect. We're going to move on to your backstory, and that gives us a chance to get to know you and understand your early business influences. So let's just start with the basics. Tell us where you were born and raised and what generation you identify with.
Oh, me. I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm a proud member of the baby boom generation. I went to one of the older inner city schools in Birmingham called Woodlawn High School, and grew up in Birmingham all of my years, and then wound up going to undergraduate school only about 70 miles away at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. My first focus in study was actually going to be pre-med because I was the son of a physician. My uncle was a physician and my grandfather was a physician. Now, I'll go ahead and give you the punchline to the joke. I later went on, as you know, certainly to get my PhD from Penn State, and now I'm the kind of doctor who cannot help you.
Well, I was going to say that it's fascinating to learn that you considered being a physician because you have a very approachable bedside manner.
Well, thank you for that, JB. Thank you. You know, it's funny. Sometimes you give what you get, right? And I had those people in my life as well who were warm and genuine and approachable and were willing certainly to share and to help me grow. And so I think I deserve to hand that back to those who come along or have come along and serve as my students and learners as well.
Terrific. Let's find out about what happened after you graduated. You have some specific role models that influenced your early years.
Well, I do, and two of them, and both of them taught me some unique lessons. The first was a lady named Emma Russo, and I worked for her actually with Bell South Corporation in Huntsville, Alabama, and she's the one that taught me the rule and the law of taking personal responsibility. Do the job that you were hired to do, and then don't be afraid of being held accountable for it. In fact, she taught me not to be afraid of failure, because effort was going, if you were really trying to do your job and to do it the right way, then you would fail from time to time. The key learning from that is to fail small, or as some people say, fail forward, fall forward. I heard, actually, I saw on LinkedIn yesterday, one of our former MBA students, Marco, refer to falling forward, right? And so failing small or falling forward. But what Emmeline did for me in my young years as a supervisor was to teach me not only that responsibility and accountability, but the health of talking about that with her. And she actually served as a coach for me to look for better ways to do things, more unique ways of doing things, and yes, occasionally ways not to do certain things, to learn from that.
Just out of curiosity, and it sounds like you were supervising people and she was managing you there. So there were some moments of failure. What I'm curious about is, how did she treat you in those moments of failure?
She treated me like a learner. She treated me like an open door that she had, that I could come in and feel comfortable. And this is going to be something I refer to in a few minutes as we talk further. Trust. So there was an automatic trust with Emma, that we could talk openly about the good and the bad and the ugly. We could talk openly about what we did right and what we did wrong. But most importantly, open the door to a genuine conversation for being coached in how to perform at a more productive rate.
Valuable stuff, particularly for managers. And if I may say, it sounds like this is the takeaway. But before we get to the takeaways, do you have another example that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I do. His name's Len Fowler, and Mr. Fowler was my third level above me as I became a manager in Bell South. And, when you go to those meetings with 2 or 3 levels higher than you, those meetings become much more strategic in nature of their discussion. And Mr. Fowler would really portray that by giving the statement when we would all ask, "So what do you want us to do?" And Mr. Fowler said, "Well, Bob, I want you to do whatever's right." And he had a tendency to repeat that over and over. It used to drive us crazy, right? "Well, Bob, that's a great question, and a problem it sounds like needs to be dealt with. Just go do whatever's right." And I go, "No, Mr. Fowler, please give me the answer. Lay it out for me, A, B, C." And he said, "Okay." He said, I trust in you that you'll go do whatever's right." And so it took a little while, maybe even some months, JB, before I'd leave his office going, "What does he mean by do whatever's right?" And it finally hit me that he wanted me to think through the problem-solving process, the decision-making process, to rectify what might be a challenge or issue for the company and for my department. And so what I learned from that, and again, the takeaway, and we'll go back over these again, I can summarize it for you, is to be a critical thinker, to think, then plan, then act, then do. And that's an old org behavior mantra that is taught in every org behavior class across the world, right? To think, plan, act, do. But I see so many organizations who are always going, ready, aim, fire, right? That's the way it should be, a ready, set, go. But so many organizations run around going, ready, fire, ready, go, and don't stop to think through how they're going to think through the approach to solving a problem. Let me give you a great example. I see so many team meetings where people come into a meeting and they spend an hour arguing with each other, when all we needed to do is to turn that, to do the corollary of that, and to come in and talk about how they can support and supplement each other, to talk about it in positive, in appreciative inquiry.
Well, I'm a big fan of appreciative inquiry, and I think that you may have provided the takeaway, but I would just like to take it a step further.
Okay.
Based on the examples that you've shared, I think there's a fundamental trust that needs to happen between the managers, and the people who report to them. So, what do you think it is that prevents managers from developing this trust?
JB, that list is awful long, my friend. Of the list of reasons why trust isn't fostered in an organization. But let me try to boil it down to a simple thing and tie it back to purpose, which we've already talked about. First of all, we're all different, right? Some of us are similar. Some of us are drastically different. And some of us have certain things in common or in difference with each other. We're all motivated by different styles, by different motives within us and the values that we hold dear. When you get a group of people, be it 2 people in a room or 200 people in a room, good managers, good leaders, good employees take into consideration that everybody in the room is not exactly like them. And so their goal becomes, instead of fighting that, becoming a part of that. Now, some people call that diversity. Some people call it inclusion. Some people call it employee engagement. But what the at sum for that is trust. If we're able to sit down and listen effectively to what the other person has to say, to present our ideas as well, to look at a problem or a situation in a comprehensive fashion, and have as the common denominator purpose. The purpose, what's the goal of the organization? If we can do all of that work, all of that, and demonstrate all of that behavior in appreciative ways with each other, targeted at fulfilling the mission of the organization, that's why we chose to work there. That's why we chose to be a part of this common thrust.
Absolutely. It is a choice, and it's a great reminder. You choose to be here, you can leave at any time, and we're on a learning journey together, and we have to help each other get through it. Our guest is Dr. Robert Prescott, also known as Dr. Bob, and we will be back in a moment to learn more about his professional journey. Please stay with us.
Hey listeners, this is Clara Mount, host of VMG's original series, Replay. In the next few weeks, I'll be hosting the Crummer Hour, where we'll invite today's Crummer Connections guests to return so they can respond to questions and comments from the Crummer community. We would love to include your thoughts as well. Send us a question or a comment and we'll read your name on the air. You can email me at clara@victormediagroup.co. Look for a link in the show notes, and thanks so much.
This is JB Adams with an important message. As a member of the Crummer community, you know it's the people that you meet at Crummer who make the greatest difference in your career. So I want to tell you about Rollins Connect. It's a networking platform that will help you stay connected to over 40,000 Rollins alumni worldwide. Rollins Connect is coming soon, and we'll have more details about it in the coming weeks. That's Rollins Connect, your connection to the Crummer community. Welcome back to Crummer Connections. I'm JB Adams. Our guest is Dr. Robert Prescott, better known as Dr. Bob, continuing graduate faculty of management at the Crummer School. And in a moment, we're going to be talking about the making of a professor. But before we do that, we're going to have a little chat right now to let our listeners know that in addition to your teaching responsibilities, you also provide management development workshops. Tell us about some of the topics that you work with there.
Oh, goodness. Anything related to behavior in organizations, JB. Management development workshops, let's turn that around. They're workshops to help managers develop themselves, not in strategy or marketing or finance or accounting. I'll leave those to the professionals who are much more learned than me in those particular areas. But in managing and developing oneself, right? Becoming, I used to refer to it in classes, I just want to be a better Bob, right? I just want to be JB, you want to be a better JB, you know? And so I continue to work even after retiring from full-time classroom work with companies from all sectors, public sector, private sector, not-for-profit sector, in developing and designing and delivering workshops on leadership, on communication skills, on conflict resolution, on collaboration, on problem solving, team building, those types of things.
All right, we are going to make sure that we include your email address in the show notes so that if folks are interested in that, they can contact you directly.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Of course. Before the break, we were chatting about your early business influences, and now we want to talk about what we call the making of a professor. It's kind of a narrow path, choosing to become a professor. And as I mentioned earlier, you had a full 18-year career in the telecom industry before you made this decision. So what were your original intentions with your career, and how did you find yourself on this path?
Wow. Look, JB, again, now you're asking me to do a life review. I think that's not only healthy, but it's for somebody of my years, it's also a daunting task to look back and reflect on it. And thank you for you and I preparing for that and for this particular podcast to deliver this message to our constituents. But, my aspirations when I went to work was to be a good person and work a long-term career with one company. Kind of keep my head down, feet moving, nose clean, do good work, and really to provide for my family. That providing for my family has to be an overarching goal of a primary goal of mine throughout life. But then along came, and so I went to work for that company, Bell South, as you've already mentioned, and worked for them for 18 years in a number of different jobs. And I'm proud to say that I worked my way up multiple positions, and I got to a level of director of HR for a $800 million division of Bell South. And I kind of looked in a life reflection, a career assessment at a level or two above me, and I didn't really like what I saw. Now, please, I'm not being critical of those jobs. They're wonderful jobs with lots of responsibility and accountability to provide good service to the public. But what it took to be successful in those particular jobs from an attitudinal or a behavioral standpoint, it just really wasn't me. I felt like it was a little bit lacking of genuineness at times and the connection with people. I needed to be involved with people. And so part of doing my job, though, what happened is a little bit of serendipitous experience occurred here. I was nominated or appointed to go off and go to an high-level executive education program. And I was told to choose that program based on my own specific individual development plan and my own specific needs for growing to become a more well-rounded manager and executive. And I narrowed my choice down to Penn State University. And this is where the serendipitous theme comes in.
Now, if I may interrupt, when the company sends you to leadership development, they consider it an investment.
They do.
And with that in mind, they're investing in you to continue working for them. So,
yes.
Yeah. All right.
It didn't turn out that way for me. But little did I know, or they know, that this would happen. What I'll share with you happened over the next 2 to 3 years would transpire. I wound up going to the program, and I came back to my job at Bell South, and I was a better manager, certainly more self-aware and more keen on what my talents and skills could offer an organization. And I began applying those at Bell South. And so for the next 2 or 3 years, wound up implementing many of the things I learned at this program, at work. So to that degree, that investment paid off for them. But what happened along the way is I had made a good acquaintance in the dean of the School of Business at Penn State. He was the faculty lead for the program I went to. And he called me one day and asked me, would I serve on an advisory board for executive education for Penn State in their attempt to try to offer better programs. And anyway, I wholeheartly agreed. I was honored that they would ask me. So for those a couple of years, I would fly back and forth on some of my vacation time to State College, Pennsylvania, and serve on this advisory board. And we, in dealing with how to help that organization grow and sustain itself over time, they decided to add a certain position to the executive education department in the School of Business at Penn State. And on my flight home, I was so moved by that opportunity that I called that dean and said, what would you think if I threw my name in the hat for that job? And he answered me with what turned out to be a life-changing reply. He said, "I was hoping you would throw your hat in that ring." And so the next thing I know, I'm moving my family, my life, my family, and my Southern accent to State College, Pennsylvania, and wound up completing my PhD there while working full time. I focused in on workforce development and focused in on human resource management as my dissertation topic, but also wound up that it dawned on me through going through that PhD program that my true calling in life, my midlife dream, not a midlife crisis, but my midlife dream was to become a teacher, and that's what I should have done. I had held corporate training positions at Bell South, but I had really never thought about teaching as a full-time career until all of this serendipitous kind of experience came together and said, found Bob looking in the mirror going, "You're a teacher, my friend, and that's what you're called to do."
And with that in mind, to sort of wrap up this message, what would you say is your career philosophy to anybody out there who's trying to build a career? What's the philosophy and what advice would you give?
For them building their career, jump in the deep end, learn to swim, trust yourself. Do that with education. Do that with building self-awareness. Do that by understanding the needs of those that you plan to serve, but jump in. You know, one of the things, my mom passed away many, many years ago, but one thing that she taught me as I was growing up was, if you're going to get in something, get in it. Think it through. There's that critical thinking coming back to play, right? First, think it through. If you have a passion, if you have a mindset or an attitude with a goal in mind, think that through. Think about the good, the bad, you know, what the ups and downs, what the possibilities, what might be restraining you from fulfilling that. But once you make a decision and have thought it through and trust your thinking, then jump in the deep end and get involved in it up to your, well, I won't say up to your ears because we tend to drown when we do, but up to your chin anyway.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Bob, I am sorry to say that we're about to wrap up our time together. And as we come to the conclusion, is there any final message that you would like to share with the Crummer community?
JB, yes, and thank you for the opportunity to do that. Commit yourself to lifelong learning. I can remember those early days in school and in my career from 18 to 22 years old. Believe it or not, I can still remember that. But even today, as I sit here many years and decades later, I'm still committed to being a better Bob, to growing, to waking up every day and trying to learn something new every day. I think it would help us as individuals, and I think certainly it would help us as a society and as organizations and business to be committed to learning something new every day. And then the ability to take that learning and have the trust and have the attitude and have the personal responsibility to apply that in growth-oriented terms to leave the place a little bit better than you found it.
I couldn't say it any better. Powerful words from Dr. Robert Prescott. Dr. Bob, thanks so much for joining us here on Crummer Connections and sharing your story. It's always a great pleasure to spend some time with you.
You too, JB. What an honor. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back again soon with another episode. Today's show is brought to you by the Crummer Graduate School of Business at Rollins College. Now is a great time to consider enhancing your career success by pursuing an advanced degree in business. And the Crummer School offers a variety of educational programs to help you become a global, innovative, responsible business leader. To learn more about the programs and the application process, go to crummer.rollins.edu. The Crummer Graduate School of Business, experience excellence. Crummer Connections podcast series is a production of Victor Media Group. It's the mission of Victor Media Group to make the world a better place by making ourselves better people. If you like this show, please follow us on your favorite social media platform. Today's show was created and hosted by JB Adams and executive produced by Gerard Mitchell, with production assistance by Kyle Sawyer and audio design by Aaron Trinka. Our gratitude goes out to Mike Brown and Loveland Finley in Alumni Relations for their gracious help and support. Until next time, Fiat Lux.